Welcome to Heart and Practice, a podcast where heart-led conversations meet mental health practice. I'm Dr. Lakesha Roney, counselor, supervisor, educator, and lifelong learner in this journey of healing and growth. Welcome to Heart and Practice, a 5-part series giving clinicians, educators, and teams and caregivers Day 1 tools to prevent burnout and rebuild sustainable heart-led practice. I'm Dr. Lakesha Roney, and this is Season 1, Episode 5, Vulnerability, Having the Courage to Show Up. Today's episode is for the helper who is great at holding space for everybody else. We're going to talk about how vulnerability has shaped therapy, supervision, teaching, and how it shapes us personally. You'll leave with practical tools, real examples, and a few sentences you can borrow for when you show up bravely. I am joined today by Dr. Marquita Garrett, PhD, LPC, ACS, and RPT-S. Hello, Dr. Garrett.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Nice to have you.
Having me. I'm loving this.
I'm going to give you all a brief introduction of our guest before we get started. Dr. Garrett is a counselor educator, supervisor, therapist, and podcast host. She is a licensed professional counselor in both Ohio and Virginia and registered play therapist supervisor. Dr. Garrett maintains a private practice specialized in the training and supervision of counseling interns and residents in therapeutic work with children, adolescents, and families. With a deep commitment to social justice and culturally responsive care, her research integrates the intersection of environmental awareness and mental health. As co-author of ACS 2025 Climate Change and Environmental Justice Competencies, she brings a unique perspective to the role of play therapy in addressing climate-related trauma in marginalized communities. Dr. Garrett is passionate about mentoring the next generation of clinicians and embraces her role as a gatekeeper, contributing to professional growth of others through education, supervision, and advocacy. She deeply enjoys working with children and adolescents, helping them navigate developmental and emotional changes through developmentally appropriate trauma-informed care. Dr. Garrett, welcome to Heart and Practice.
Thank you. I'm enjoying being here.
Good. I'm so glad you are here. I had the pleasure of being a guest on Dr. Garrett's podcast with my mother and thoroughly enjoyed that experience.
I love your mother. I love you.
She loves
you. Your mother is a wonderful soul.
She is. She is. I'm very grateful. So we're not trying to perform vulnerability for points. We're practicing how to show up on purpose with heart and with boundaries. That's important for us to have that balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Garrett, if you don't mind sharing us a little bit about your origin story, what brought you to this work, just a little bit, because you were a guest on our episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
So just from your perspective, give a little bit of background of where you grew up, a little bit about your family, what brought you to the field of counseling.
Well, I grew up in between Ohio and Connecticut. And while I was working in Ohio and Connecticut, I've always worked with teenagers. I love adolescents.
I do too.
My first internship, my psychology internship, was adolescent groups. I worked with teen mothers. I worked with, at the time, in the 90s, HIV, people who had HIV and what they were going through. And I also had a group of teenagers who had alternative situations and needed alternative behavior education.
Okay.
So working with adolescents was my thing, even when I didn't know what I wanted my thing to be. So when the opportunity came along and I was trying to figure out what's next, what's next was actually counseling and play therapy and working with exceptional children. So my minor is exceptional children, but that's actually my major because I'm always looking at kids' minds and their hearts to see how we can make them work together.
Most definitely. I'm so glad the educational system now uses that terminology, exceptional education, because those children are very exceptional.
They are.
They are.
And you never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get. So, Dr. Garrett, what's the moment in your journey where vulnerability became non-negotiable?
Actuality, it probably was after my first husband died. My church just watched me in my depression, and they could not figure out what can we do for her. So they wanted me to start an after school program. And I was like, oh, I got to get up and I got to leave my bedroom, the safety of your bedroom. And I started going to this after school program in Toledo, Ohio. And it just became my life. Like it took over. It was not work. It was actually very cathartic for me to, what we did was we did a rites of passage for young girls. We called it the Kwanzaa program. And we did a rites of passage for young girls. And then just before I moved back to Connecticut, we started a young men's program. So at the end of their coming out, they would be in tuxedos, and in the 90s, it was JCPenney's. I commissioned JCPenney's to donate dresses for the girls. And we're talking a level of, this is not something they would have been ever exposed to. So it was something where they learned etiquette, they learned emotional regulation, because it was a gang-infested area, and we were gang-free. So we would have 2 different gangs in the facility, and they would do just fine.
Wow, because you're removing all those barriers and the cultural aspects of the gang life, and you're removing that to create more membership and belonging within the group.
Yeah. This is a place of love.
Wonderful.
Everybody that comes in the door, no matter what color you're wearing. And we also made it neutral colors.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've worked in residential facility where we've had gang members, and the colors of the gangs were banned. They could not have clothing items of that color.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we loved it. And then they had me start a Saturday program called Grand Central Station in another part of Toledo. I started it, but I wanted to finish my education. So I moved back to Connecticut, and I finished up my bachelor's, and then I moved to Ohio to finish up my master's degree.
I wanted to reflect back on the church giving you that assignment of that after school program.
Yeah. I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I thought, I just can't say no, and that's why they're doing it. You know,
Right.
I've been a youth leader. I've been a youth minister. I've worked with teenagers, like, just because.
Right.
So the church asking me to do that was not unusual, but I didn't see it as a project. And I basically took it beyond what they really imagined it could be.
And it seemed like they knew that's what you needed to.
They knew I needed something.
Yeah.
They knew I needed something. I was attending church, but I was on autopilot.
Yeah.
And I was just living like a shell.
Probably still grieving.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow. That's amazing. I find out more about you every time we talk. This is wonderful. So my next question is, when vulnerability is healthy and boundaried, what does it create in therapy, supervision, or teaching?
In supervision, it creates authority, because you cannot be an authority figure and nobody know anything about you. Nobody knows that you can have flaws. Nobody knows that you can make mistakes and still be human and still be accomplished. In teaching, when I was teaching in the high schools, it allowed the authenticity of who I was to be reflected in what I did. When I teach in college, I continue that same authenticity to make sure that people understand that you can't be a leader if you're not authentic. Authentic. I can't get that out. Authentic.
Right.
You can't be a leader unless you're authentic. And same thing with counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Your clients don't want you to come in and act through their session.
Right.
They want to be with somebody real,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that is not judging them and that they can understand has just as many flaws as they do, but we're here and I'm holding space for you.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working with children and adolescents, because they see through it and they will tell you
they do
that you're being fake, or they'll pull your leg.
They do. They'll pull your leg anytime.
Anytime.
But they love the fact that you are who you are.
Most definitely. And working with residents, I like to be authentic as well. I learn just as much from them as they learn from me. And I love it when they ask questions or telling me something new and different. They're like, well, have you heard of this, Dr. Roney? I'm like, no, I've never heard of that. Or do you know this, Dr. Roney? No, I sure don't. Let me look it up and see if I can find some additional information, or they give me resources. I love that because I don't know everything.
And you're not supposed to.
And not supposed to. I know what I know.
And being vulnerable and being willing to learn is a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
I'm constantly learning something.
If you're not learning, that means you're not growing. That means you're stagnant. So learning and growing is part of the evolutionary process.
Yes, it is.
So there are a lot of myths about vulnerability. And I have a few myths that I want to explore. So the first myth is that vulnerability means oversharing. That's not necessarily true. We can be vulnerable with our clients. We can be vulnerable with students and residents and even our colleagues without oversharing. Myth number 2 is that if I'm vulnerable, I will lose authority. Like you mentioned, authority. You don't lose authority by being vulnerable. Myth number 3 is that vulnerability means I have to cry. That's not true either. You can be vulnerable and sharing an experience without becoming overly emotional. And another one, well, this is what I believe. Vulnerability is courage with boundaries.
I love that.
Courage with boundaries.
It sets limits and it gives you the wings at the same time.
Exactly. I'm a fan of Dr. Brene Brown. Her research on vulnerability is extensive, and I've been immersed in her works throughout the years and reading her books, and I use a lot of her books with clients, and I like to access her resources on her website and show her videos and all of that. But that's why vulnerability means so much to me in my practice, is really learning from her the importance of vulnerability. So my question for you is, how has vulnerability shaped your therapy, your supervision, and your teaching?
Well, vulnerability is my life. I stumbled into different aspects of my life because I was in a vulnerable situation. So if I'm quiet about that and just have you think that I'm poised and I have everything together, I'm not being a good supervisor. Because you attain to be perfect. And I think being perfect or being in control are both illusions.
They are. It's not true. It's a palace.
So there's that. You said oversharing is a myth. I think oversharing is when you ask somebody, can you hold this for me? Can we talk about this because I need to put this somewhere? I think vulnerability is more, I need to share this so that you understand that I'm human. So
that the client or the student or the resident, they can make some meaning out of it,
right,
and have a better understanding of the
right.
situation.
How
It's
does
for
it
them.
pertain to what we're talking about at this moment, so that you can learn from my vulnerability?
Exactly. Just like self-disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
If it's for the benefit of the client, then self-disclosure can be
It's
healthy.
beautiful.
But if it's for the benefit of you, then that's a boundary.
So we need to ask, who is this for?
Who is this
before
for?
we share.
Exactly. So one supervision scenario is a supervisee makes a mistake and is spiraling in shame. How do you respond with vulnerability without making it about you?
That's just being human. So let's sit back and figure out how we're going to restore your humanity and get rid of the shame.
Most definitely. And sometimes we have to share our own experiences in internship or as a resident, and some of the mistakes that we made, to let them know we're all human. We're going to make mistakes, but you can't break the client.
Right.
You got to remind them, you can't break the client.
Like you said earlier, every time we sit down and talk, you learn something different about me. My residents do too. And I always ask, have we talked about this yet? Because this is very pertinent to what we're talking about now.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's cool. Scenario number 2. In therapy, you realize that you missed something and that you need to repair. What does heart-led vulnerability repair sound like?
It sounds like the next session. When you spoke about XYZ, I should have probably dived deeper into that. But I didn't know if you were ready, or maybe I wasn't ready. So let's look at this now.
So taking accountability for what has happened in order to make a repair.
Yes.
Wonderful. A lot of my experience has been working with the LGBTQ plus community. And there have been times that I've had to stop and apologize for misgendering someone.
Ooh, I tell them up front that it is really hard for me. Give me grace and I will work with you, because I love you as who you are. And I want to honor that. It's just my memory.
Right. And as long as they hear that, a lot of times they're okay.
Yeah.
Because you're making an effort, you're acknowledging, your part in it. And they're very understanding.
They are.
They are very understanding. And then you just become more conscious of it so that you don't continue to make that same mistake. Most definitely. But I've done that. And even calling the person by their birth name instead of their preferred name, and having to make repair.
Well, that's why I like the wonderful EHR that you use, because they give you the nickname right in there.
Yeah.
And that's all I go by.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Scenario number 3, I like these little scenarios to get your take on it. Scenario number 3, in your personal life, you need support, but you are used to being the strong one. What is a simple, brave ask?
Not today. Not today. I'm putting down my crown. I'm relaxing. I'm restoring, whatever the case is. Not today.
And that's a whole sentence.
It is.
Period.
Without explanation.
Without explanation. Not today. I like that. And what is your best recommendations to help people be more vulnerable without flooding themselves or others?
Be authentic. If you are authentic, literally, you are yourself. And that's vulnerable in itself.
It is.
You cannot continue to hold up a facade. You cannot continue to wear a mask. You cannot continue, because that's too much effort, too much work. And just be yourself.
That's a big takeaway today, just to be authentic and to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability also means to me that I hear you, I see you, and I can relate to you because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone.
That's a beautiful one. That's when the math is mathing, as
Yes.
my teens say,
Yes.
because we're more alike than we are different.
Exactly. And that's when shame melts away.
Mm-hmm.
When you're able to have someone in front of you being able to see you and
Right.
to relate to you so that you don't feel alone.
Exactly.
Most definitely. So let's wrap up with a quick recap. Vulnerability is courage with boundaries. And remember, small, consistent reps build trust with yourself and others. The more you're vulnerable with others, you build trust. And here's the call to action for our viewers. Share this episode with one colleague or friend who needs permission to show up honestly. The second thing is to identify one way you can be more vulnerable this week. If it's asking for help or acknowledging when someone else is experiencing shame or doubt. It could mean taking a break and saying, like Dr. Garrett, not today. Think of one way that you can be more vulnerable this week. And using one brave sentence. I like that, not today. That's just one brave sentence to stand up for yourself and to be able to protect yourself
Mm-hmm.
with setting boundaries. Dr. Garrett, where can people find you?
I work as a clinical director for Centering Elements. So Centering Elements on IG and FB, and centeringelements.com website. But I'm also Marquita Garrett, PhD website.com, as well as Marquita Garrett YouTube page, PhD. And it's me, Doc G, on Instagram and Facebook.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you for
much, Dr.
having me.
Garrett, for your wisdom and your positive words of encouragement. I know our students, our residents, colleagues, other therapists, caregivers, your message will resonate with all of them. Thank you so much. And this is our final episode of season 1. And join us in a few months for the launch of season 2. Thank you for tuning in with me. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Be brave on purpose. I'm Dr. Lakesha Roney. Thanks for listening. You can find Heart and Practice at heartandpractice.com, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn.